Hello and welcome to your full moon forecast. I'm your astrologer, Cawnawyn Mor, and today I'm hoping to teach you a little bit about how I go about reading a chart and give you also a forecast of this full moon in Aquarius on August 9th, 2025. So let's take a look at the chart. Here we are. I always use a 0 degrees Aries, so we're not talking houses today. This is just to look at mostly the aspects, which, oh my gosh, look how perfect some of these aspects are. That's wild. We will definitely be talking about this kite in the sky, if you can see this kite shape here. But first, we need to talk about the full moon itself. So if you've been following these forecasts for a while, you know what I'm going to say. A full moon is an opposition. Here's the sun at 16 degrees of Leo opposing the moon at 16 degrees of Aquarius, making this a full moon in Aquarius. And this axis, Leo-Aquarius, is now being activated through this opposition. And where do oppositions typically show up? Within relationships. We are being confronted by one of these energies. Thus, it's reawakening, it's illuminating that relationship within the self. So as above, so below, as within, so without. What is the Leo-Aquarius axis? Now we're in Leo season and the sun is in its domicile. It's where it's happiest. Why? Because the sun rules the sign of Leo, the proud lion, the self, the ego, the soul's journey in this lifetime. As an evolutionary astrologer, I believe that the sun sign shows us what we signed up for, essentially. So maybe you don't resonate with your sun sign and that's kind of a new energy for your soul and it's kind of feeling its way through, and maybe you really resonate with your sun sign. Something about that journey feels comforting and at home for you. The sun might be in a really comfortable place in the chart, well aspected in its domicile or in its glory. If you have an interesting relationship to your sun sign, I would invite you to investigate that further because that tells you a little bit about where your soul's at on its journey. But of course, we're here to talk about the full moon. So the moon in Aquarius, and right now the moon is as far away from the sun as it can get. But not only that, it's in the sign of the sun's detriment. So the moon is facing the self in Aquarius and saying, have you thought about the collective? Have you thought outside of yourself? Like humanity, there's a bigger mission, bigger cause here. There are bigger issues besides just you and your ego, your self-interest. And so the moon in Aquarius can remind us, can humble us, frankly, that the world is bigger than ourselves. And sometimes, if we've been really narrowly focused on our mission, our goals, our lives, whatever our drama looks like in the moment, the moon in Aquarius or any Aquarius placements can really highlight what is going on in the wider world. But I also see this axis is kind of representative of self, sun being this place of creation, right? What does the sun do? It brings life. So it's a place of vitality and creation and inspiration. And the moon in Aquarius is now sort of bringing light to who is receiving that. So you're out there creating whatever it is you do, whatever it is you're making, and the moon is saying, okay, but there are implications to this. There are consequences to creating this. Are you creating joy? Are you creating gratitude? Are you creating drama? Are you creating strife and war? Like there will be consequences for your actions. So the moon in Aquarius also, because this is an air sign ruled by Saturn, there's a disconnect, there's a coldness here. That's not to say those of you with an Aquarius moon are necessarily cold, although I wouldn't be super surprised if that's how you've been labeled, because the moon in Aquarius, well, the moon is deeply feeling and often represent what we need in order to feel secure, therefore also our insecurities. It's how we nurture our body, our physical body itself. When it's in Aquarius, it kind of gets detached from itself. In fact, most air moons, so if you're a Gemini, a Libra, or an Aquarius air moon, you can feel like it's a hard connect for your emotions to show up in your body and for your mind to recognize that. Why? Because we're trying to logic our way out of our feelings, like convince ourselves that feelings don't really matter. And Aquarius moons typically get the brunt of that stereotype, I feel, where they are so cold, so disconnected that they're like robotic. Okay. So if you are an Aquarius moon, I'd be curious if that's been your experience. And if you have other placements or if your rulers of Aquarius are in watery or fire signs, that can change that Aquarius moon. Remember, we're thinking beyond just what a sun sign is. But the sun's really important in this one. So if we think about the sun in its happy home place, right, and that like joyous sun, if we think of the sun card in tarot, right, it's like joyful energy. And the moon in Aquarius is kind of coming in with cold, stark reality here. So is there somewhere where you've been approached with like a sobering reality, a cold truth, a consequence that maybe you didn't expect or is bigger than you realized, right? Has more weight than you initially thought. Some of this is going to be emphasized because the moon is going to be co-present with Pluto, which has been now in Aquarius pretty much this whole year and is firmly making its home here. It's in retrograde, but Pluto kind of gives us that sense of dread because it's what we fear in the dark. Because Pluto is the dark. It's the things that are hidden, that are unseen, that are buried under the ground. And so with Pluto here, it might be adding this further sense of doom to the moon, right? Or you might be coming in from this place where you're kind of hopeless. You're seeing your situation, your life, your relationships, and like it's been really tough. And it's hard to break out of the serious tone of this. And it just kind of feels like you've been weighted down or burdened. And now either life circumstance or a relationship is coming in saying, hey, lighten up a little bit. It's going to be okay. You can't control everything. You know, Aquarius can be a bit of a scientist and want to like control all the variables. And the sun's going to do what the sun's going to do. It's going to light you up and obliterate. And sometimes that looks like making a huge deal out of something that it itself, right, the self cares deeply about. And everyone else is going, could you be a little less self-centered, please? Like there's a bigger picture here. But this moon in Aquarius can get very serious and bogged down. Plus with all the doom of what's happening, what's going on in the world, it can be really hard to balance that. So I encourage you to have some grace with yourself and recognize that this is a place that is encouraging you to look outside of self, but also to recognize that you can't control everything and that it can be lightened up a little bit, that maybe accepting some gratitude or doing something that makes you feel brighter and lighter could assist the situation. A shift in attitude might assist you. How can you look at your life, your circumstances, whatever it is you're going through with a different perspective, even just in the spirit of play? What would the worst outcome of that be? To just take a different look at your scenario. Try to see it through different eyes. Shine a light on a new path. And this could come from a deep change in attitude. And where I'm going to say the attitude shift might come from is a gratitude shift. Now, we actually have a further emphasis of this idea of control, actually, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of these very tight aspects here. Crazy. So while we're dealing with this opposition, this Leo and Aquarius, we're also dealing with Mars in Libra opposing exactly Saturn and Neptune conjunct in Aries. So this is actually, again, emphasizing this idea of Aries being representative of the self, of me, and Libra being you. Libra is associated with a relationship between me and you, how I relate to you, the world itself as a mirror, or relationship as a mirror. So I see myself in them, I don't see myself in there. And Libra is constantly making those comparisons because it's assessing everything around it. So once again, bringing an awareness, a greater awareness to the relationships surrounding. So Mars is here. Mars rules over Aries, where Saturn and Neptune are. So these guys are actually answering to Mars, but Mars is as far away from its rulership as possible, unlike the sun. The sun is in its happy place, in its home. Mars is as far away from its home as possible. In Libra, it has a much harder time operating. Why? Because Libra is beauty. Libra is ruled by Venus. It's the things we like. It's inspiring once again. This is also kind of another creative point, but I really think of this as like the dialogue that's exciting. The chat that you have with someone that just lights you up. And what does this eventually lead to is typically a partnership. So that's where Libra's like inspirative air is coming from. But Mars wants to do warfare. Mars wants to attack. Mars wants to act. And so how does it act in Libra? Well, sometimes it acts in a way that is trying to target and create war with words, but it's under this mask of looking beautiful. So this can look like passive aggression. This can look like gossip. This can look like being in the know about everybody and having all the details and all of the ideas, right? So you're seen better for it, but then what are you actually doing? Creating drama, creating warfare. But in its highest form, Mars in Libra acts as a judge. It says, I see all the relationships, all the different components of what's going on socially, maybe globally, communally, right? And I see the through lines here. And now we are going to make decisive action based on a sense of justice. And it's coming up against Saturn and Neptune, Saturn being another malefic. So Mars and Saturn are considered malefic planets. They traditionally have harder lessons with them, harder circumstances that arise, challenges, obstacles, again, warfare. So when these two are pitted against each other, it can look very difficult because Mars wants to go, Saturn wants to stop. Mars wants to fight and Saturn wants to say no. Saturn in Aries is trying to establish some form of control because that's what Saturn does. It's trying to establish a boundary. And Aries wants it yesterday. There's not a whole lot of time to build a boundary, a structure, a threshold, a place. And Mars is running this from Libra. This is what I'm looking at when I see a chart like this. I'm seeing all these oppositions and then all of this energy, which we'll get into as well, because everything is so tightly together. What does that say? First of all, that everything is talking directly to each other. There are a lot of different components, a lot of pieces, and they're in direct conversation. So maybe in your life, this looks like I'm balancing this over here. I have this plate I'm spinning over here. I have these obligations, this responsibility, and it feels like just so much, right? Now we're talking about that burden, the serious tone of that. There's just so much to handle because all these different components are at play, and not only at play, but relevant and talking to each other. It's not just something in the background that we can ignore. They're all kind of right here. When we have this axis of Aries, Saturn trying to control the self environment up against Mars acting in a way that is taking into account everybody else's business, ideas, thoughts, inspirations, right? We have these two oppositions acting right now where it's very much a self world and an outside world. Maybe that looks like a great big community, those consequences like I talked about, or maybe it looks like just you and another person in relationship and having to struggle and fight through that. So I'm really seeing the themes of control arise with this, the burden of, the amount of activity, noise, work, responsibilities, obligations, implications, like thinking about things way beyond maybe the scope that they're even necessary, where it's like you're treating something like it's a life and death situation, but it's not. If you really take a close critical look at it, like feeling like you are under the weight of all this pressure, but when you actually look at what's happening, you realize that the pressure is coming from things that you're really grateful for, that you get the opportunity to do. It just feels overwhelming and overbearing. So we have this beautiful air trine happening with Mars, Pluto, and Uranus, which that is a beautiful air trine. However, we're dealing with some pretty heavy hitting planets in air signs. So I'm not going to say that looks easy. The floodgates are open, right? If we think about like the turbines, the air turbines are all the way up, spinning, spinning, spinning. What is it with? It's with Mars, a malefic, action, war, irritation, hotness. It's with Pluto, this overwhelming darkness, sense of doom, right? And then Uranus, which is the great awakener. It's we're going to come in with a lightning bolt and transform the whole thing and change and make you feel like you had no idea where your footing was. All of these are working really harmoniously together. Is that necessarily what we want? It sure is going to feel very, very busy, very, very loud. A lot of information is coming down the line. I think people could probably look at this easily on a global scale. So how is this showing up for you? Is there just a lot you're carrying right now? If you're so interested, please put in the comments below. Let me know how you're feeling, what you're going through with this full moon. So this grand air trine is operating, and we have these sextiles between Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. So all of our big guys, these are all the outer planets, right? They're way outside of where we are in the solar system. They're further out, which means they're generational. They're going to operate much slower. And they're these long-term transits that are not necessarily immediate, but when aspects like this happen and they're exact like that, that's what makes the immediacy of the result really, really clear. There's this tug of war, frankly, between, are we trying to like grip tightly and grit our teeth through something, or are we allowing things to balance out and letting it play out and seeing what the results are, being more flexible? With all of this air and fire, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of ideas being thrown around, like what if this, what if that, what if this thing, what if I go down this direction, what if this? With all of that, there's not a whole lot of earth in this chart. The only thing we have in earth right now is the south node, not looking at asteroids or anything like that. It's going to be really easy to feel like way up in your head with this full moon. I so encourage you, ground yourself a little bit, touch some grass, get your feet in the earth, because there's nothing like holding us into this place of actual tangible reality. What we do have is Venus and Jupiter just about to make their conjunction, which this is a really gorgeous aspect. These two together, this is our two great benefics coming together in the sign of Cancer where Jupiter is exalted. That's going to look hopefully like a big blessing out of all of this, but it might look like this big mind like conundrum twister going on leading up into, oh, that's what I need. But they're in a water sign. So this is making this not just busy, noisy, overstimulating, but now our emotions are caught up into it as well. So it's going to be very easy to feel off kilter, feel overwhelmed, right? Again, overstimulated. And really, with the lack of earth in this chart, do some earth grounding, do some look at the facts, right? Use that air energy to get all the data down, but then try to look at it with an objective point of view. Act with a sense of justice here. What is justice, right? Well, it's finding a balance, but sometimes balance can be this sort of watercolor term of oh, things are operating in harmony, when really the world is full of crisis all the time. We don't get to calcify or crystallize time in such a way that everything stays balanced forever. There's no happily ever after in real life, right? So what can we do? We can operate as best as we can with a sense of justice. Is this right? Is this wrong? Is this what is necessary? Is this what will heal? Is this what will allow me to do better in maybe a little bit? Do I need to slow down in order to speed up? Slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? Aim for the smooth. Aim for that level of harmony where it's not this idea why I can't get it together. It's finding the together, the peace, the groundedness within the self to navigate all of the wind turbines, all of the waves from the water signs, all of the fires, cultivating that sense of steadiness within the self. And what does that mean? That you've got to ground yourself in all of this energy. Wow, what an insane full moon this is. These aspects being this exact are pretty amazing to see. Also with all of the changes, the massive changes we've had in our outer planets. I know everybody I've talked to is definitely feeling it. These are some new and unprecedented times once again. I'm sure you're tired of hearing astrologers say that, and truthfully, I am too. If I can just be real. It feels exhausting, right? When I think I'm gonna find that place of peace, of togetherness, something throws us off. And it's been a huge lesson even for myself in just the last couple of years that cultivating that sense of groundedness and steadiness has to come from within. Because as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. Everything going on right now, I wish you all the best. Try to remember to balance or find the justice within the sense of self, allowing for a little bit of a more nuanced approach, a slower approach when necessary, right? There's so much fire in here and air. It's easy to get caught into the fray and the speed of things. It doesn't have to be so fast. We're still at the very tail end of a Mercury in retrograde too, and he's getting very, very loud at the very end of this. So just be ready for everything to feel incredibly urgent. And I urge you to take a step back, let go of the control a little bit, find that sense of peace within, and recognize it's not going to kill you. It's going to be okay. What is not killing you is making you stronger. Take some deep breaths, right? Work with the air energy. I'm doing the same right now from here in my home. I wish you all the very best with this full moon. Please let me know in the comments how you're navigating, how you're doing. If you want to book a reading with me, feel free. You're welcome to. My calendar is pretty limited, but I do Zoom one-on-one readings, as well as you can book and skip the line and get a reading within 72 hours as a recorded reading. If you have a question or a longer session you want to do, I am available. Also, be sure that you catch my forecast on Bonfire Babble podcast, where I talk about the entire zodiacal season up ahead, so you can catch what the full moon forecast is going to look like a few weeks in advance. Subscribe to this channel if you're into more astrology and music, and follow me on socials where I'm posting lots more music, astrology, magic, and more all the time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next eclipse that we are having in Pisces next month on September 7th. Blessed be.